You ever watch your whole life evaporate in a single moment? Not in some fiery explosion, not in a scream, but in silence, the kind that hums louder than chaos. That's how it happened for me. Not with yelling, not with a slammed door, not even with a goodbye. It happened while I was lying in a hospital bed, drugged up and stitched together. I had no clue that while I was being kept alive with machines and morphine, my wife was out there selling our house, our home, without even telling me. I gave 30 years to that woman. 30 damn years, through failed pregnancies, job losses, cancer scares, family deaths, vacations that turned into therapy sessions. I stood by her when she couldn't even stand to look at me. I made excuses for her cruelty, called it burnout, midlife crisis, trauma. But this was not just a betrayal. It was a surgical extraction. She didn't just leave. She removed me. And here's the thing, I didn't see it coming. Not because I was blind, but because I trusted her with my life. Now I've got nothing but this voice in my head and the truth I never wanted to tell. And you're gonna hear it. All of it. Because this story doesn't end where she left me. This story starts the moment I realized I had nothing left to lose. And that's when a man becomes dangerous. Really dangerous. When you hit your 50s, you think you've seen every kind of betrayal. You've seen friends walk out of your life. You've lost jobs you gave your soul to. You've buried people you never imagined living without. Life teaches you the texture of loss, the shape of disappointment. So when something new blindsides you, it's not just pain, it's a betrayal of everything you thought you'd already learned. Claire and I met when I was 22. She was wild back then, spoke in riddles, laughed too loud in restaurants, made every room feel too small for her personality. And I fell hard. She liked that I was quiet, said I grounded her, said I made her feel like the world wasn't spinning too fast. We moved in together within a year, married by the time we hit 25, bought our first home at 29. It wasn't fancy, just a modest 2-bedroom ranch with peeling paint and a creaky porch swing. But it was ours. We had dreams that lived in walls, and we painted over them year after year. We tried for kids. God knows we tried. But life had other plans. Miscarriages turned into silence. Fertility treatments turned into resentment. I saw the light go out in her bit by bit. I kept thinking I could bring it back if I just loved her harder, better, more patiently. And she got colder. Not in big ways. Not at first. Just little things. Forgetting anniversaries. Smiling with her mouth, not her eyes. Refusing to take photos together. When I turned 50, she took me to a vineyard. We stood there, looking over the hills, drinking overpriced wine, and she said, "I think we're finally entering the next chapter." I thought she meant together. I thought she meant peace. She meant escape. The signs were there. She started going on self-discovery retreats. First, once a year, then every few months. She joined new wellness groups, started journaling about living authentically. One time, I picked up her journal by mistake. She left it open on the coffee table, and I caught a single line before she snatched it away. I feel like a widow in my own marriage. Still, I stayed, because that's what I do. I hold the line. I carry the weight. So when I started having abdominal pain, I didn't even tell her. I didn't want to ruin her nature cleanse weekend or whatever it was. I just figured it was a stomach bug. I'd ride it out. Until I passed out on the kitchen floor. I woke up in the hospital, lights too bright, stomach stitched up. The doctor said I was lucky. My appendix had ruptured. If I'd waited another hour, I might not be here. I was alone. No flowers. No calls. Not even a voicemail. I checked my phone. 1 bar of signal. No notifications. Just a text from Claire. "Hope you're doing okay. Talk soon." End. Of Grease Rod. Tandov. Tandov. Du. End. End. Of. End of. End. 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 No, I love you. No, I'm on my way. Just cold, polite detachment. Like I was some colleague who'd caught the flu. I waited. Hours passed. Nurses changed shifts. The room got darker, colder. I finally asked one of them, "Did anyone call to check in on me?" She looked uncomfortable. Said, "Oh, she mentioned something about moving? Said you two were downsizing?" I blinked at her. "What?" She backpedaled. Maybe I misunderstood. I thought, but I knew. That sentence haunted me. Said you two were downsizing. I was flat on my back, stitched together with staples. And my wife was somewhere out there, telling strangers we were downsizing. When the hospital released me, I didn't even ask her for a ride. I used the cab app on my phone, told the driver to take me home. As we pulled into the neighborhood, I felt it. You ever feel something before you see it? That's what it was. The air around the house was different, off, like the house itself had exhaled me. The grass hadn't been cut. The flower beds Claire used to obsess over were empty. The windows were bare. No porch swing. No car in the driveway. I thought, maybe she's inside. But my key didn't work. Not jiggled a bit and then opened. Didn't work. I mean, it had been changed. I stared at that doorknob like it had slapped me. Then I noticed something taped to the glass. An envelope. Inside was a single piece of stationery. Her handwriting. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." I stood there. Bag slung over my shoulder. Bandages itching under my shirt. And it hit me. I'd been evicted from my own life. I knocked. Rang the bell. Nothing. The house, our house, was silent. It was never about the house. It was about the years, the meals, the inside jokes, the quiet Sunday mornings, the grieving, the surviving. And just like that, she erased it. I sat on the curb for a long time that day. Long enough for a neighbor to peek through their blinds, then look away. Long enough for the sun to change angles. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, holding that damn envelope, realizing I was now a visitor in the story I thought I helped write. It was the first time in my life I didn't know where to go. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. Not broken, not yet, but something else. Awake. You ever walk into a place and feel like you're stepping into a memory someone else tried to burn? That's what it felt like when I opened the door to that storage unit. After being locked out of my own home, I stayed in a motel off the interstate. One of those places where the carpet smells like a mix of bleach and regret. Every night, I'd lie on that lumpy mattress staring at the ceiling, wondering where the hell my life had gone. And every morning, I checked my phone. Nothing from Claire. Just silence. I didn't even know where my stuff was. My clothes, my tools, my photos, everything that told the story of my life. Until one day, I got an email. No subject line, just one sentence. "Your things are at Ironclad Storage off Route 42. No greeting. No apology. No explanation." When I pulled into the lot, the guy behind the desk didn't even look surprised. Said she'd prepaid 3 months and left a list of contents. Divorce drop, he called it. Divorce drop. Like I was some shipment she'd finally returned to sender. He led me to a unit in the back. Roll-up metal door, padlocked. He handed me the key like he was handing over a body. I unlocked it, pulled the door open, and there it was. My life in boxes. Not neatly labeled, not carefully packed, just dumped. Clothes stuffed into garbage bags, framed photos shattered at the corners. My grandfather's old radio sitting on top of a box marked junk. And there, on top of everything, was a manila envelope with my name scrawled in her handwriting. Inside, divorce papers. Already filed. Already signed. She'd put a sticky note on the front. "Let's not drag this out." That was the moment the anger kicked in. Not rage that comes later. This was sharper, colder. The kind of anger that clarifies things. I sat on the cold concrete floor and went through every box. Photo albums missing. My journal's gone. The anniversary gifts I gave her, not one in sight. It was like she'd curated this dump, choosing what parts of me to discard. But there was one box at the back different from the rest, taped shut with red electrical tape, no label. I opened it. Inside were things I hadn't seen in years. Our wedding VHS, the watch I gave her on our 10th anniversary, a notebook mine filled with poems I wrote when we first met. I didn't even know she'd kept it. Underneath, a flash drive, just labeled, "Read this." That flash drive nearly burned a hole in my pocket all the way back to the motel. I borrowed the receptionist's laptop, told her it was an emergency. She didn't ask questions. The drive had one file, A folder called Letters. Inside, dozens of documents, dated from the last 7 years, all addressed to me. Each one started the same. You'll never read this, but I read them all. Every single one. She wrote about how she felt invisible, about how she resented how I always fixed things instead of listening, about how she'd outgrown our life but didn't know how to leave without becoming the villain. She wrote about a man she met at her wellness retreat, said it started as emotional clarity and turned into something more. I wanted to scream, rip the screen from the hinges, but I didn't, because in those letters, I saw the slow-motion death of our marriage in real time. And worse, I saw my part in it. I hadn't been a monster, but I had become small, predictable, a ghost of the man she married. And I hated that I understood her. But here's the twist no one expects. I didn't hate her. Not yet. No, I saved that for the man in the letters. His name was Scott. She wrote about how he made her feel 25 again, how he listened, how he never dismissed her ideas, how he told her she was wild and brilliant, words I used to say, back when I still saw her. I scrolled through the letters until I found the last one. Scott and I are thinking about moving to Oregon. If you're reading this, it means I finally had the courage to start over. Start over with my house, my money, my wife. I shut the laptop, and that's when the rage came. You know that moment in every revenge movie where the character stares into the mirror and decides who they're going to become? That wasn't me. I didn't want revenge. I wanted answers. So I started digging. Claire's social media had gone dark, but her best friend Marissa, still posting. And, not careful, I saw pictures of a new housewarming party, a backyard with string lights that looked suspiciously like my old ones, a golden retriever. Claire smiling, holding a wine glass standing next to a man with salt and pepper hair and 2 white teeth. Scott. I zoomed in. Checked the geotags. Lake Oswego, Oregon. I booked a flight. Call it foolish. Call it desperate. Call it pathetic. I needed to see them with my own eyes. The flight was delayed, then rerouted, then delayed again. I spent 17 hours between airports and layovers. By the time I landed, I hadn't slept in 2 days. I rented a car, didn't even check into a hotel, just drove straight to the address I'd found in a tagged photo. There it was, a craftsman-style house, new paint, fresh landscaping. She'd rebuilt her life. Quickly. I parked 2 blocks away, walked, my heart thudding so loud I thought it might alert the neighborhood watch. I didn't plan to knock. I just wanted to see her. But as I rounded the corner, I froze. There she was, Claire, in a sundress, laughing, with Scott, and a child, a boy, maybe 5 years old. I thought I'd hallucinated it, but then I heard him say, "Mommy," and she bent down, scooped him up, kissed his cheek. That's when it shattered. Claire never told me she had a son. She never said anything in those letters. Nothing. And the math didn't add up. If he was 5, then she'd had him while we were still married. I staggered back. I felt like the air had been knocked from my lungs. And suddenly I understood. She hadn't just left me. She'd built a second life, while still pretending to be part of mine. I walked. Miles, maybe. I don't remember. I ended up sitting at the edge of a lake, watching the water ripple in the moonlight. And that's where I made a decision. Not to hurt her, not to ruin them, but to take back something I hadn't had in years. Control. Funny thing about healing, it doesn't come like a sunrise. There's no golden light, no orchestral swell. It's more like a slow blink. One day you notice that the rage has rusted over, and then you stop checking the rear view. But sometimes, just when the dust settles, the past finds a way back in. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because Ray was out at her watercolor class, and I was fixing the loose hinge on the back gate. Sedona wind had blown it clean off. I went inside to grab a screwdriver, and there it was, a thin white envelope resting neatly on the edge of the kitchen table. No stamp, no return address, just my name, in her handwriting. Claire. I stood there, holding it between my fingers like it was some kind of venom. She hadn't contacted me in over a year. Not a text, not a call. And now this? I told myself not to open it, that I owed it to Ray, to myself, to let it die quietly. But I opened it. Of course I did. Inside was a single sheet of cream paper, written in blue ink, the same ink she used to write grocery lists and love notes and birthday cards, the kind that bled slightly into the fibers. It smelled faintly of lavender. I never planned to send this. That was the first line, underlined. But if you're reading it, it means I couldn't carry it anymore. Not without giving you the truth, the whole truth, the kind that people don't write in letters because they're afraid of the consequences. I sat down, and I read, "I'm sorry." Simple. Devastating. She started with the apology that had always been missing from the emails, the court filings, the silence. Not just for the house, or the money, or the boy I never knew about. For everything. I wasn't honest with you. Not really. And that's what broke us. It wasn't Scott. It wasn't the house. It was the lies. The ones I told myself every day. Until I forgot what the truth looked like. She wrote about the early days, how she'd fallen for me in a way that felt like gravity. How she believed we'd build a life no storm could break. But storms came. Not the kind you see coming. Quiet ones. Loneliness that wrapped around her like a second skin. I stopped telling you how I felt because I thought you wouldn't understand. And I stopped listening to you because I was too scared to face what you might say. Her handwriting trembled here, like she was writing through tears I couldn't see. Micah. I didn't plan him. He was a surprise that changed everything. But he was also a secret I thought would protect you. If you'd known, I feared you'd see me as a betrayer, not a mother. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be either. That line hit me like a freight train. Not because I was angry, but because I felt a deep ache for the mother she was, the woman trapped between her past and the future she couldn't claim. She wrote about nights spent crying into pillows, wrestling with guilt and love and fear. I never stopped loving you. But love isn't always enough. Sometimes it's just the beginning of the fight, not the end. I lost myself in that fight. I folded the letter slowly, careful not to crease it more than it already was. And then she wrote this. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for your peace. Because I know now, peace is the hardest thing to find when your world shatters. That was the last line. No signature. No yours forever. Just silence. For days after, I kept the letter on my nightstand. Read it again and again, sometimes out loud. Sometimes just staring at the words, trying to absorb what they meant. She was human. Flawed, scared, broken, but human. And that realization unraveled something inside me. Something I hadn't felt since the night I sat by the lake in Oregon. Forgiveness. Not for her, but for me. I called Ray. I told her about the letter. She listened without interruption. Just held my hand and said, "That's the kind of weight you don't have to carry alone." Together, we started writing a new chapter. One without ghosts from the past. One where my story wasn't defined by what she did or didn't do. One where I was free. So yeah, the letter she never sent, it wasn't just words on paper. It was a key. A key to let go. A key to rebuild. A key to finally come home.
You know that moment when your life splits in two? The you before and the you after? The lake, the moonlight, the realization of the child. That was my split. And something strange happened out there in that Oregon night. Something almost peaceful. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't storm that house and demand answers. I sat. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I listened to the silence. By the time the sun rose, I knew what I had to do. Not to fight for her. Not to expose her. Not even to punish her. I had to walk away. But walk smart. When I got back to the car, I made 3 phone calls. The first, to a lawyer. A real one. Not the guy I called on a referral from my brother who helped him with a parking ticket once. A real take, no prisoners Beverly Hills divorce hammer. The second, to a forensic accountant. And the third, to my old friend Greg, the guy who owed me a favor from that one time in Cabo I'll take to the grave. They say you can't outmaneuver a liar unless you're willing to learn their game. So I did. Claire had funneled joint assets into a separate business account under her maiden name, something to do with coaching retreats and spiritual healing. She'd made herself look broke on paper. Convenient, considering she was living in a home I'd paid off. My lawyer found the loophole. She filed the divorce before the sale went through, meaning, technically, the equity in the house wasn't hers to claim. Technically, she'd signed documents under false pretenses. Technically, that's fraud. We filed a claim. Froze assets. Initiated discovery. And I didn't send a word to her. Not one. Not a warning. Not a threat. I let the paperwork talk. But here's the part you won't believe. She emailed me. Weeks later. The subject line just said, "Please." No body. Just a PDF attachment. A scan of a handwritten letter. Her handwriting. Blue ink. Torn edges. Like she ripped the page out in a panic. You weren't supposed to find out like this. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you about Micah. Micah. That was the boy's name. I wanted to tell you. So many times. But after he was born, I didn't know how to unravel it without breaking you. Breaking me? I reread that line 5 times. That was when I realized something that made my chest tighten. She still saw me as fragile, but I wasn't. Not anymore. I didn't respond. I let my lawyer handle it. And you know what happened? She panicked, tried to delay hearings, claimed she was emotionally unfit to testify. But she forgot who she married. She forgot that I built my life from nothing, that I spent years fixing everything from engines to bank balances. She forgot that underneath the quiet man she stopped seeing was someone capable of burning everything down legally. And yet, I didn't. I gave her an option. Split the remaining assets 50-50, including the profits from the house. Or we proceed to court, where the fraud could tank her future earnings and potentially end her coaching practice. She signed. Quickly. And just like that, I wasn't a cautionary tale. I was a man who'd been gutted but not undone. A few months passed. I moved into a small place outside Sedona. Desert air. No ghosts. I started working with my hands again. Fixed up a rusted 1969 Mustang with more dents than dignity. I joined a local hiking group every Thursday morning. No one knew my story. They didn't ask. We just walked, talked, breathed. And it was there, in the middle of some canyon I can't pronounce, that I met someone. Not in a movie way. Not in a head-turning, bird-singing way. She was hiking ahead of me, muttering to herself about trail markers. I offered her a granola bar. She laughed. That's how it started. Her name was Ray, short for Rachel, a retired ICU nurse. Tough, sharp, carried a flask of bourbon, just in case the desert needed disinfecting. We didn't talk about our pasts, not at first, but she noticed the way I paused when someone said, family. The way I looked away when couples held hands. She didn't pry. She just said, whatever storm you walk through, it didn't take you with it. And that is when I felt the first sliver of something I hadn't in years. Hope. 6 months later, I got a postcard. No return address. Just a photo of a coastline. And one sentence. I'm sorry. I hope you're free. That was it. I stared at it for a long time, turned it over, smelled it like an idiot. It smelled like salt. And lavender. I never told Ray about the postcard. Not because I was hiding anything, but because it didn't matter. Claire's apology was too late, not because I hated her, but because I didn't need it anymore. I had already forgiven her. Not for her, for me. Because dragging that bitterness behind me like a broken suitcase was killing the part of me that still wanted to live. Now, I wake up before the sun. I make coffee the slow way. French press. Boil the water. Grind the beans. Ray says I look like a desert monk. I read. I hike. I breathe. I'm 53. My knees ache. My hair's thinner, but I've never felt more mine. There are still days I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gotten sick. If I'd been home. If I'd listened better. If I'd told her how lonely I was, too. But then I remember, life doesn't wait for ifs. It only responds to what you do next. So if you're hearing this, if you're someone standing at the edge of your own collapse, know this. You're not ruined. You're not discarded. You're not the worst thing that ever happened to you. You're someone who survived. And that makes you dangerous in the best damn way. Because when they think they've buried you, you get to decide what grows from that ground.
I used to think life was something you could control. Like a machine with gears and levers, turn this, pull that, and you get the outcome you want. But life isn't like that. Life's more like the desert wind. Unpredictable, relentless, sometimes gentle, sometimes tearing through everything you thought was solid. It's messy. It's painful. But if you listen close, you can hear something else. A whisper. A promise. A new dam. When Claire disappeared from my life like a ghost in the night, selling the house while I was in the hospital, vanishing with my savings, I thought that was the end. But it wasn't. It was a beginning I didn't see coming. You want to know what the hardest part was? It wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the loneliness. It was learning how to trust again. How to trust myself. For years, I'd built my identity around being a husband, a provider, a fixer. The man who kept the house standing and the family safe. And when all that was ripped away, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. But then Ray came along. Not with promises or fairy tales. Just a steady hand and a quiet strength that didn't try to fix me, but walked beside me. And that changed everything. We built a new life together, not perfect, not without scars, but ours. Early mornings with coffee and sunrise hikes. Long talks under the stars about dreams and fears and all the things we'd left behind. And through it all, I realized something important. You can't outrun pain. You can't bury it or drown it or sell your house to hide from it. You have to face it. That letter Claire never sent? It was more than words on paper. It was a bridge, a chance to understand, to forgive, to heal. I don't pretend it erased the past, or that it fixed everything, but it gave me something I hadn't had in a long time, peace. So here I am, 54 years old. Not the man I thought I'd be, but maybe the man I was always meant to become. The Mustang still parked in the garage, a little rusty, a little rough around the edges, just like me. But it runs, and so do I. If you're listening to this, if you're standing at your own crossroads, wondering if you can survive the storm, let me tell you, you can. You're stronger than you think. And sometimes, the darkest nights bring the brightest dawns. So don't give up. Don't turn away from the pain. Face it. Learn from it. And when the wind changes, spread your wings and fly. Because your new dawn is waiting. And it's closer than you think.
You never really know when a chapter ends. Not the way books tell it, with a neat page turn or a final sentence that lets you breathe. In life, chapters end in the middle of a Tuesday. In the last sip of coffee that goes cold while you're lost in thought. In a voicemail you don't return. Or in the laugh of a child that doesn't belong to you but still echoes something familiar. Sometimes the end feels more like a beginning. And sometimes it feels like both. 3 years had passed since the hospital, since Claire, since the fire. And still, there were days I felt the burn of it like it just happened. Grief doesn't vanish. It just gets quieter. It stops screaming and starts whispering. It waits not to haunt, but to remind. And what it reminds you of matters. I got another letter. This time, it wasn't handwritten. It was typed. Precise. Formal. Legal. It came from an attorney's office in Santa Cruz. Claire had passed away. Ovarian cancer. Fast, they said. Silent, until it wasn't. She'd been sick for over a year. And she left something for me. Now listen, I didn't cry right away. Not because I didn't care I did, but because my grief had been used up on the version of her that left, not the version that died. Still, there was a weight to it, a heaviness I hadn't expected. She left me a letter, a real one this time, typed. Yes, but signed in ink. That same blue, bleeding ink. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I've thought about you every day, even when I didn't deserve to. There's no making this right. I know that now. But I want you to have something I never gave you when it mattered. The truth. She told me about Micah. He was 7 now. Loud, stubborn, funny. Loved trucks. Hated broccoli. Didn't know I existed. Didn't know I ever could. But in her final weeks, she'd written him letters too. One for every birthday. One for the day he asked about his dad. And one with my name on it. I met him 2 months later. His aunt had taken custody. She didn't know what to make of me, this graying stranger who walked up the front steps with a folded letter in one hand and a trembling heart in the other. But she let me in. Micah was playing with toy dinosaurs in the living room. He looked up at me like I was just another adult, not the past, not the future, just there. I didn't tell him who I was, not yet. I just sat with him, asked him his favorite dinosaur, has said Spinosaurus, not T-Rex Spinosaurus. Already a rebel. We played for an hour, and when I stood up to leave, he said, "You can come back if you want. You're not weird." That was it. That was the beginning. It's funny. I spent so long running from the brokenness, but sitting with him, this small hurricane of curiosity and defiance, I didn't feel broken. I felt anchored. Zen. Like maybe the universe wasn't cruel after all, just complicated. Ray. She's the one who said it first. You should tell him. She meant Micah. I wasn't ready. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to need it so badly. Didn't want to be that man, the one who tried to rewrite history through a child who never asked for any of it. But Ray knew me. She said, he doesn't need another hero, just someone real. So I told him, not everything. Not yet. Just that I used to know his mom. That we were friends a long time ago. That I'd like to know him, too. He asked if I had any cool toys. I told him I had a garage full of tools and an old Mustang. His eyes lit up like sunrise. We started spending weekends together. I taught him how to hold a wrench. He taught me how to beat him at Mario Kart, which, for the record, I never did. We talked. About small things, mostly. But one day, as we were fixing the Mustang's hood, he asked, "Did you love my mom?" I didn't expect the question. Didn't have a script ready. I nodded. Yeah, I did. For a long time. He didn't ask more. He just kept tightening the bolt, like it wasn't the biggest moment of my life. One night, I sat with Ray on the porch. Desert wind. Stars above. A little bourbon between us. I told her I never imagined this. That I'd end up here 55, part-time granddad, full-time survivor of a love story gone sideways. She just smiled. You're not surviving it anymore, she said. You're living it. And she was right. Because somewhere between the loss and the forgiveness, between the rusted bolts and bedtime stories, I had stopped being the man who was left. I had become the man who stayed, who rebuilt, who loved again. You see, people think stories end when the heart breaks. But that's just the middle. The real ending? It's when the heart opens again. So, this is my full circle. Not a fairy tale. Not a perfect ending. But one built with bruised hands and second chances. One where I learned that love isn't what you lose. It's what you choose to give again and again, even when it's hard. So to you, listening now, maybe you've lost someone. Maybe you were betrayed. Maybe you're sitting in the rubble wondering how the hell you're supposed to keep going. Let me tell you this. You will keep going. And not just going growing. Because even in the ashes, there's soil. And in the soil, if you stay long enough, something beautiful takes root. For me, it's the sound of a little boy calling my name from the garage. It's the woman who never asked me to be whole just to be honest. It's the engine of a Mustang roaring back to life, reminding me that nothing, not even a broken heart, is beyond repair. This is my story. And if you're still breathing, still aching, still hoping, then yours is far from over. Write it. Live it. Own it. Because you're not what happened to you. You're what you become after. And I became free.